Yo, what's up? This is Eason. Welcome to my podcast, my very first podcast. Today we're going to be talking about Beats by Dre, and it wasn't just about music, but rather a movement, their whole company, their identity, their exit, and so on. So in today's episode, we dive into one of the most iconic, per se, startup exits of the 2010s, and it's essentially when Beats Electronics sold to Apple on May 28th, 2014 for a crazy $3 billion. And just for context, the company Beats by Dre is founded by Dr. Dre, who a lot of you may know as a popular artist, and then also a pioneering hip-hop producer. Jimmy, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. It's spelled Iovine, so I won't try to butcher that name, so I'll just call him Jimmy throughout this podcast. This exit was huge. Obviously, it was as I mentioned earlier, it's in 2014, so $3 billion then is surely a lot more with inflation nowadays. But how did this deal happen? What was Beats by Dre? What was the identity behind it? And also, how did the two founders turn Beats by Dre into a premium headphone brand and then selling it for multiple billions of dollars? And then in this podcast, I'm also going to go in depth with what it means for investors, the culture, and also just future founders in general. Beats Electronics was founded in 2006 by Dr. Dre, a pioneering hip-hop producer and artist, and Jimmy, as I mentioned. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, bro. But Jimmy is a legendary record executive, and he's been working with Dr. Dre for quite some time now, up to this point when they founded Beats by Dre. So the two of them were frustrated by the poor audio quality of mainstream headphones, and as you can probably put two and two together, music and just quality in terms of headphones is probably everything to these two, as they are some of the biggest people in the music industry at the time. This is a specific on one of the articles that I was reading. They were specifically frustrated with the headphones in terms of how they failed to deliver the deep bass and detail found in studio environments. Excuse me. Okay, and then the mission for the two co-founders are to fix sound. So essentially, they wanted listeners to hear music as artists intended. Sometimes if your headphones are not the highest quality or not what artists imagine, the sound quality and everything about the music can just be completely off. So in their goal with Beats by Dre, they just want to target this exact problem and they just want to put an end to it. And then Beats initially partnered with Monster Cable to manufacture the hardware, while Dre and Jimmy focused on branding, marketing, and cultural relevance. And you can understand why this makes sense too, because Dr. Dre, with the name tag that he has, with the image that he has, that is like the perfect branding and marketing technique. And even Beats by Dre, right? It has his name in it, which is pretty sick. So next up, I'm going to talk a little bit about the key milestones that Beats by Dre hit. It's going to be in chronological order as well. Beats Studio headphones launched in collaboration with Monster, and then it was priced at $300 minimum, not minimum, but for the lower quality ones, it was $300. And as the Beats Studio headphones like increased in whatever features it was, then that $300 cost would increase as well with it. And then they were positioned as a luxury lifestyle product, not just like a tech gadget. So rather than just a piece of technology that you can add onto another piece of technology, it wasn't that, but rather it was just a luxury piece of technology that people wanted. And then in 2009 to 2012, strategic celebrity endorsements. So a couple of names are LeBron James, Lady Gaga, Lil Wayne, who was also massively big in the music industry at the time. And then, given that, they absolutely went crazy in terms of their revenue as well. In 2012, Beats by Dre dominated the premium headphone market, and they controlled over 64% of the U.S. market share in its category. That's from an article I read as well. In 2013, Beats bought out Monster Cable, ending the partnership and then taking full control of its brand. So as we mentioned earlier, they originally went to Monster Cable, and then just to buy themselves out of the partnership, they just bought the company entirely, which is pretty sick. In 2014, Beats by Dre launched Beats Music, which is a streaming service built on the acquisition of MOG, M-O-G, I think you pronounce it. Okay, and so the next big key milestone for Beats by Dre after 2013 when they bought out Monster Cable was in May 2014, which is when Apple just entirely acquired Beats Electronics. And when Apple acquired Beats, it wasn't just, the headphones, it wasn't just the products, but it was also the streaming services that they had as well. And it was for a total, as I mentioned earlier, $3 billion, which is huge. Okay, so now I'm going to go a little bit into the challenges and difficulties that Beats by Dre faced, not only when they first started out as a company, as a startup, but all the way up until their acquisition from Apple when they exited. And so the first one I wanted to talk about is the legal battle with Monster. So as I mentioned earlier, in 2013, Beats had bought out Monster Cable, which had ended their partnership and that's when Beats by Dre took full control of their brand and company. But before the Apple acquisition, Monster had claimed that it was unfairly outed before Beats' acquisition. And so Monster sued Beats, but the courts eventually sided with Beats as well. So there are some legal difficulties in there. There's also a premature deal leak, which was huge at the time when this deal was happening. It's all over the internet still to this day. But Dr. Dre, in a video with Tyrese Gibson, he prematurely bragged about becoming the first billionaire in hip-hop before the deal was signed. And it's also super interesting looking back on Dr. Dre bragging about, quote-unquote, becoming the first billionaire in hip-hop before the deal was signed. Because due to his bragging, the whole deal between Beats by Dre and Apple almost fell through. And that would have been detrimental to not only Beats by Dre, but Dr. Dre in general. Him being a successful businessman, him owning a successful startup, it could have ruined a lot of different things for him. So it just goes to show that it's not only in big companies acquiring smaller startups that, they prioritize privacy and secrecy. I think it goes way beyond just startups. It can be just big company to big company when they do different deals, different operations and whatnot. A lot of these companies just prioritize secrecy, and that's a commonality. And then the last challenge that I want to talk about is the competitive market that Beats by Dre was competing in. So at the time, before they were acquired by Apple, they were already competing with established brands such as Bose and also Sennheiser. I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm not entirely too sure. Nowadays, that's not a brand that you hear very much anymore. Following Apple's acquisition of Beats, now Beats is competing with AirPods, which is it's interesting because Apple owns both of them. But it just goes to show these huge established companies, Fortune 500 companies, when they acquire smaller brands, it just, not always obviously, but if done right, it just grows and grows and grows. The revenue, the name, brand image of the company, and so on. Moving on from the challenges, I want to go a little bit into the outcomes of Beats by Dre being acquired by Apple. And I want to start by talking about the founders. So yes, Beats by Dre was sold for a total of $3 billion, but that doesn't just mean like $1.5 billion for each of the co-founders. But instead, when such a big deal like this happens, of course you're going to be bringing in bankers to look over all the paperwork. You're going to be hiring lawyers just to look over all the paperwork as well. And after all of these fees accumulate, each of the two co-founders had an earnout of hundreds of millions of dollars. And this also just elevates Dr. Dre's personal brand as well. So being as popular as he is, as much attention as he had other business ventures as well. So just the publicity from this deal, it just elevated, I keep saying that. But yeah, it elevated his other brands and also his personal brand. And then also from the deal, Jimmy had joined Apple, and up to this point, he's played a crucial role actually in building Apple Music, which for a lot of people know is a top competitor of Spotify. Just my personal opinion, Spotify is also better, but Jimmy's doing his thing at Apple Music, which is pretty cool to see. Apple Music launched in 2015, so it's been about 10 years as well, and then it has merged Beats Music. That's where Beats Music went. It merged into Apple Music, and yeah, now operate a whole bunch of stuff, I guess. So the acquisition of Beats by Dre for Apple has helped Apple do a few different things. The first one is they're entering the streaming space for the first time. So as I just mentioned, because Apple acquired Dr. Dre's Beats by Dre, they also acquired their streaming services, and then Jimmy helped that streaming service turn into Apple Music, which is now one of Apple's largest revenue streams. Also, Apple's whole team gained expertise in music curation and also human driven playlists, expanded into audio hardware, which paved the way for Apple AirPods, and also just the global success of Apple Music in general. So yeah, a $3 billion acquisition. Now, I don't even think it's calculatable. Is that even a word, calculatable? But I don't even think you can calculate how much money Apple has made from 1, selling Beats, 2, Apple Music, and 3, AirPods. Like a $3 billion investment, and the turnaround is infinite. It's exponential. You can't really calculate it. That's how great of an acquisition it was. And then for investors, early on investors of Beats by Dre. So here I have from PitchBook. Brown University is amazing for allowing us free access to PitchBook. It's pretty sick. But early investors such as Accel Partners and also Vivendi, I think that's how you pronounce it. They made a huge return on investment. So we know that a startup starts small, right? Make your initial investment, but the startup growing all the way to the size where it can be acquired for multiple billions of dollars, that's really sick. For investors, that's like, that's a unicorn, right? That's like their jackpot. That's sick. So just looking back on the cultural outcome of Beats by Dre, for me personally, when I look at this deal that has happened, over 10 years ago up to this point, right? Nowadays, when you see startups, at least from all the ones that I see, they're all like AI. They're all ML, all these different things. But very, very few that I come across is going to be music headphones or just headphones in general anymore. But I think just the whole case of Beats by Dre being sold to Apple, it just goes to show the importance and power of branding, entertainment and music. All these startups, I'd say the bulk majority of these startups have nothing to do with music up to this point now. And then just the product design, how did they overcome competition? Not overcome necessarily, but how did they compete with Bose, an established company, right? And then also it's just proving that cultural capital, when it's done right, it can just translate into massive financial outcomes. So, like, if Dr. Dre and Jimmy were not the founders of Beats by Dre, would they have become successful? I guess we don't know, right? Would they have had the same investors? We also do not know that. But because they were so famous and because somebody had taken a chance on them, had taken a gamble on them, it's just, they got some bread, bro. It was pretty sick.